Welcome to the Athletes Edge podcast. We've worked with 49 pro athletes and 36 semi-pro athletes, and in today's episode, we unpack the common mistakes athletes make when it comes to tapering. So we'll get stuck in. So, Tim, for athletes and parents who are listening, or coaches, prefer the term tapering but aren't sure what it quite means, I guess, give us a bit of a rundown. What is tapering and why is it so important?
Yep. I think I can cover both in the sort of one sentence. It's a strategic, so planned reduction in our training volume with the goal of maximising performance. So I guess the easy examples are things like big races for things like our individual athletes, whether that's swimming, track and field. It's a little bit more challenging in a team sport athlete because they're almost trying to maximise performance every week. So they're not sort of planning a week or 2 week long taper. They're sort of more micro dosing tapers within a week and sort of being more targeted with their training loads and intensities constantly. But I think if you think of like an Olympic sport, Olympic game coming up, you've got this big training block and it's that sort of week or two out. How do you manipulate your training so that you wash away fatigue as much as you can, keep your performance at a really high level so that you really maximise and peak at the right time?
And so what are the biggest mistakes you see athletes or coaches make when it comes to tapering?
Probably the biggest, if I pick one thing, is in and around the reduction in volume and to the point that it creates detraining or reduced performance. There's a few reasons why that happens, I think. So it's just a misunderstanding of what tapering is. So for me, and when I've seen it work best in my experience is when intensity doesn't change, sometimes it actually increases, but it comes off the back of we reduce the volume of sessions. So if you think of an exercise, say in the gym, say what's something simple like, let's even push-ups, something that people can do at home. If I did 3 sets of 10 and 10 was pretty hard for me, obviously that's going to carry some fatigue and even a little bit of soreness, through my chest and arms and stuff the next day. But if I said to you, you only had to do 4 sets of 3 reps. So you've gone from doing 3 lots of 10, which is 30, to now 4 lots of 3, which is only 12 reps. How explosive do you think you could do those 3 push-ups, knowing that you do 3 and get 2 minutes rest, do 3. So you're actually training with more intensity, so there's more intent, more speed in the push-up, but because you've reduced the total number you're doing, you're actually not going to get that same sort of fatigue accumulate off the back of it. So if we did that for a whole program, then obviously we're going to see great results. So we don't need to drop the intensity, and that could be speed, it could be load, but what we do want to drop is our volume. So say, for example, a running session, we might still do sprints a day or 2 out from our sprint event, but we might just do a lot less of them. We might not do, if we do, 3 times 3 of like a fly sprint or, an acceleration type drill, we might just go down 3 lots of 1. So we significantly reduce the volume, but we keep it in there to keep the athlete feeling really sharp. So where I see, given the population we work with, where that detraining and sort of reduction in intensity also comes from, to me, is when you're dealing with less capable athletes, so younger athletes, we're not talking Olympians and, the LeBron Jameses or the Nick Dacosses of the AFL, that taper can be a lot shorter and almost doesn't need to happen, in my opinion. Like the higher up you go, the more you look at it, and then the bigger the taper gets because they've got higher output. So training for a better athlete creates more fatigue than it does for a 10-year-old. They could probably do 4 sessions a day and be fine. Whereas 4 sessions a week for a really high-tuned athlete can be pretty taxing. They need a lot of recovery from that.
And I think that's where maybe athletes fall into the trap of that sort of under-training and over-recovering. Like, I know we've had those chats in the past around that kind of stuff and always trying to feel fresh for game day, and they end up actually feeling worse for it, whereas if they can actually train more consistently, they actually end up feeling better off the back of it.
We did a whole podcast on exactly that. It's the game. They think they need to feel fresh for the game because they're still recovery from the last game because they've been under-trained that whole period leading up to that previous game. So now every game is building fatigue on them, but because they're under-trained leading into that and then continually under-trained, now it's getting too much for them.
And that's where, most athletes who we would say undertrain anyway, and then tapering for 2 or 3 weeks, no gym, no sprinting, no nothing, then you can you wonder why they feel so flat when it comes to comp day or whatever it is.
Yeah, the best athletes, like we said, just stay consistent. They manipulate small details, but they never miss sessions. Their weeks, if you counted the number of sessions they complete, that doesn't change. It's just the small details in what goes into those sessions is what we manipulate.
And so, can you share potentially a story or an example that you had of an athlete who may have got some bad advice around tapering? And
well, potentially a few, and not that we always get it right, but I think we try and learn from our lessons, and I guess what makes us different is we're constantly thinking about this stuff. So always reflecting. So one recently, I can talk about because she's had some really good results over the last couple of days in some major national competitions, is 3 days out, was really nervous about her gym session and wanting to drop a lot of what she did out of it. Convinced her to drop 2 or 3 reps off every set, so that's 20 to 30% reduction, give or take, but keep her weights the same as what she's been doing, just as an easy way. And like I said, the results so far have been really good. Hopefully that continues across the week, but set some all-time PBs on that. Not to say that's just the reason why, but the fact that we keep that intensity in there is really important. Another one which hasn't happened yet, but was talking about, again, 2 weeks out, the reduction in intensity. So I need to back off my weights in the gym. And I was pretty quick to say, that's not how we taper. And I'm happy to have a chat with a coach on this, because we want the intensity to stay there. Like we said, it's the volume that we want to come down. And then interestingly, when we talk about play some other sports, have you given consideration to that sport? So they're pretty quick coaches to jump at the gym and blame the gym. But then they're playing another sport. Like, is that backing off? Potentially going to play that and then travel to go away to this competition the next day. So what's more fatiguing? Doing 2 gym sessions a week, or playing netball twice a week and a game on the weekend?
And so, it's all well and good to talk about the misconceptions and the bad advice out there. So I guess, what would you consider a good taper, and what would that look like for you in terms of how you would structure it, say, for maybe pick a couple of different examples of different sports?
Yep. Well, I think for younger athletes where there's a big event, so say like swimming or track, where it's it's maybe a once a year sport, or you've got a month, 2 months to plan for it. Obviously, you build your training across that period of time, knowing that you've got a period, so you're getting as much performance as you can. And then I would say sort of 2 weeks out, you're starting to drop volume, but not too much. And then a week out is when you start to really focus. It's almost like race prep. So we keep like max intensity in there on some sessions, but we're going to significantly reduce how many reps of those we do. So it's just really fine tuning. And I would say no longer normally for a week for an athlete, if I give you a number, sort of probably under 15, 16. Obviously there's some exceptions where there's some exceptional young athletes, but for the most part, that would cover them off. Then in those individual top sports, for a high level athlete, they're probably backing off about 2 weeks out. Just because, like we said, there's more fatigue attached to the training they can produce, because they're faster, they can produce more force. That means there's more energy being used, more nervous system fatigue, so they need more time to recover. What's interesting this time of year is we're starting to talk footy finals, netball finals. So what I would be doing is making sure you stick to your routine now. So if you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, gym type stuff, don't drop out Friday. Because what happens is we're talking about reducing volume, keeping intensity high. If you've been missing sessions, now when you add a session in, even if it's small, it's extra. So if you've been averaging 2 sessions a week, now you add a third. Even if you reduce that by half, it's still half an extra session. Does that make sense? So my advice now would be about a month out-ish of finals is making sure we're staying consistent, and then hopefully programs are adapting, and then gradually we're going to reduce some volume, particularly later in the week. Monday doesn't have to change too much. It's obviously about active recovery and a lot of our general qualities. Middle of the week, we're fine-tuning a bit more, and by the later in the week, we're trying to really sharpen performance so that we peak on the weekend, knowing that a final is even probably more important than a regular season game. So that would be my advice around the taper there is, first of all, stay consistent, because otherwise it's hard to taper from no training. And then from there, you start to reduce that volume by sort of about a quarter to a half of what you're doing in that session.